Okay, so we have talked about why and we have talked about what. Let's talk about how. How is the hard part. How is where all the work is. So the first thing I want to talk about is the power of conscious language shifts. So I watched this beautiful talk by Lyra Boroditsky. It was a TED talk about her study of languages and differences between languages. And what stood out to me the most was, one, how profound the impact of language is on our view of the world and our perception and just how we see the world based on how we describe it to ourselves and to others with our language. And another little piece that stood out to me was she compared Spanish and English, and how in English we look for culprits when something happens, and in Spanish they don't. So she gave an example where she had this picture of there's a man leaning over a little bit and there's a vase having fallen over in a museum. And in English, we might describe it as he knocked the vase over. And in Spanish, it might be something along the lines of the vase is fallen, or the vase is broken, or the vase has been knocked. But there's not as much focus on the culprit. And it's something that was really important to me in my parenting learnings, because I'm trying, and my mental health and emotional learnings, because I'm trying to shift away from this world of blame and shame and really empower my kids to not carry that crap around that we've all been carrying around, frankly. And part of that was learning how to be really conscious with my language, and parenting in general has really been about how to be more conscious with my language and how I choose to explain things, how I choose to respond. And when we're conscious of our language, we can shift our mindset. So you may or may not be aware of Carol Dweck's growth mindset ideas. So a fixed mindset. Personally, I believe a fixed mindset and a growth mindset can really be defined by language. So in the respect of a growth mindset, if we say, I can't do that, it's a limited mindset. If you add the word yet, I can't do that yet, you're now stepping into a growth mindset. That's one word that can make a huge difference to how we show up and what we believe is going to happen, or what we believe we're even capable of. And that's one word. Imagine if we were conscious about how our broader language affects us and those around us, how we feel and how we show up. So I actually did a whole month's worth of a series of articles on medium.com about conscious language shifts we can make. So I talked about, I'm a bit of a nerd I love words and language, hence becoming a writer. But things like, even things we say to our partners, our friends, or our kids when we're feeling frustrated, you're not listening to me. Well, that's placing blame on the other person. But I'm not feeling heard is expressing how I feel when something else happens, not blaming the other person for it, but it puts us in a position to, in that particular instance, it puts us in more of a position to receive empathy rather than to hit someone's defense mechanisms. If we feel blamed, if we feel shamed, or if we feel victimized in some way, we might react. We might become defensive. We might start to attack. All sorts of things. We might withdraw. Depends on what our base programming is. But when language is worded in a way that reflects how we feel and our experience without blaming it on other people, powerful changes can happen. And not just in our relationships, in our own minds. So I can't do that. And not just adding the word yet. How about instead of I can't do that yet, it's I am practicing. Because practicing, we accept, comes with mistakes along the way. Because you don't start playing piano and then suddenly be an amazing pianist. You don't start learning one day and become Mozart. You learn the scales. You practice new skills along the way. You practice a song. You make mistakes. You hit the wrong keys. It sounds messy along the way. Brené Brown talks about the messy middle. So in consciously shifting away from I can't to I am practicing, it's more empowering for us. And that's just another little language shift. I am practicing. I am responsible. I'm taking responsibility for this thing that I'm trying to do, and I can master it. Rather than I can't do it yet. I'm practicing. I'm trying. I'm capable of trying to become a better person and working towards that and making progress instead of aiming for perfection. So there's a lot of things that I'm practicing. One of the other conscious language shifts that we're really working on, my husband and I, is around expressing how we feel. So in my mental and emotional health learnings, stepping away from I feel sad or you make me feel sad, that's even worse. Instead of you make me feel or I am this, it's I feel this way when something happens. I felt sad when I saw how upset and overwhelmed my daughter felt this morning when she left, because we usually spend every day together, and she felt a bit overwhelmed by the idea that she was going to go spend the whole day with her dad and her sister, and that I wasn't coming. And it's okay for me to feel sad. And when we say I feel sad, when we're stepping away from being that feeling. It's not I am sad. I'm not sadness. That doesn't define who I am. I just feel it right now, and feelings come and go. The emotions pass. And it takes any blame away. So I'd feel confident to tell her I feel sad, that I can see how overwhelmed you are. That's okay for me to express it. I'm not blaming her for that. And she doesn't have to take on that, the idea that my feelings are because of her behavior. It's okay for me to feel sad. And I called out for her, I can see that you feel really disappointed that mummy's not coming. And sorry for making a kid thing. I know often when I used to do courses and things, it was always very professional focused, but I'm a stay-at-home mum now, so a lot of my stuff is parenting focused. And I apologize if that's insensitive to anyone who is trying to have kids or wants kids and they haven't. I appreciate it can be very hard to try and be inclusive and to tell our own stories, so something I'm working on. But back to the point, I can call out, I can see it looks like you're feeling this way. So it looks like also gives my children the space to go, oh no, that's not how I'm feeling. So when we use observational language rather than blame language, and when we express how we're feeling in a way that expresses how we're feeling rather than putting it on someone else or making it somebody else's responsibility, we start to really empower ourselves to take responsibility for how we're feeling and for how we show up and things like that. I'm just trying to think of some of the other topics that I covered in the series. So I will include a list of the shifts and changes that I'm personally working on and some links to the medium.com articles. And I challenge you to really consider, when you speak, or when you listen to others speak, listen to the way and the words that they use. And in that, sometimes you can see how people define themselves or how people view the world. And the more we actively listen to the way people describe things, and the more things we know, like the Four Horsemen or the Triangle of Drama, the way you hear other people speak, you might start to identify patterns of behaviors. So, oh, she did this. Okay, so there's blame there, and there's potential victim and perpetrator roles. Or, yeah, I just can't do that. Okay, limited mindset there. Oh, he always does this. Okay, so there's this view that it's all or nothing, that it always happens that way. That might be an exaggeration. So there's different thinking styles. I'll include a list of unhelpful thinking styles as well. That when we're really conscious of language, we can hear how people perceive the world. I will let you know, it can feel really confronting to know that, because the more I have learned about mental health and psychology and emotional health and parenting and conscious language, the more I can hear in the words that people are telling me that it isn't exactly what they're telling me. And it can feel really overwhelming, because you can see just how much pain and trauma and suffering there is in the everyday. But the more conscious we are of those language shifts. And another thing that I'm really working on is can instead of should. I'm working on dropping the word should from my vocabulary. That is a really unhealthy word. If you use it, try not to. You can drop that word from your vocabulary, because should comes with blame and shame and obligation. And what we're really talking about here is taking control of our lives and becoming our best selves. There is no obligation or should. It's what do we want? How do we get there? What can we do to get where we want to go? Not we should do this. Because if we think we should do something and then we don't, we might feel blame. But if we think we can and we choose not to, well, that was our empowered choice not to do something. So, yeah, I challenge you here to listen out for the way that people describe themselves, and particularly conflict, or how you describe yourself or conflict, and listen to where are your limiting mindsets that come through in your language, or where is there blame and shame that you can get rid of? Where can you add more empathy and consideration and understanding? Because the other thing I'll talk about here is skills. So for me personally, something I tell my toddlers all the time is we can practice bravery together. It's okay to feel scared. Even though we feel scared doesn't mean we're unsafe, and we can practice bravery. Bravery is something we practice when we feel scared. It is not an innate skill. Our language often reflects that, though. He is brave, she is brave, they are brave, they have courage. Well, no, they just practice it. Some people have mastered it, they've practiced it a lot. Same with any skill. So to me, things like bravery and compassion and empathy and kindness and understanding, these are skills. I grew up thinking that they were traits that you either were or you weren't. But that is because of the language I grew up with. And that is a limited mindset. I can practice kindness. I can practice understanding. I can practice all of the traits that I want. I can practice them and master them. And I can be brave by practicing bravery, by feeling scared and pushing through it anyway. And part of the how we'll talk about is getting used to discomfort. And when we consciously shift our language in a way that shows that we are safe and that we don't need to feel shame and blame and to carry around all of our old stuff, when we shift our language towards health and well-being and longer-term mental well-being, we can change our mindset, and that's how we actually rewire our brains. It literally comes down to practice, and we can do it with language.